Recording is in progress. Thank you all for joining us. This is Andrew Williams, Jr., and this is being brought to you by several organizations. One is through Lady Alicia Hamilton, TRN.TV, International News, and Universal Citizens Media Network. This is also, as I said, being brought to you by Conversations with Andrew Williams, Jr. And in addition to our call-in, you can also view this on Facebook. That's Facebook.com/Andrew Williams Jr. That's where the live broadcast will be. Later today, it'll be rebroadcast to TRN.TV, International News, and Universal Citizens Media Network. Among our sponsors this morning are Princess Asio Kansi and Royal Love 777.world, and Mr. Terrence Mayfield of The Black Phenomenon, theblackphenomenon.com. So this is the Morning Wake Up International Conference Call. We're here every morning, and we have powerful guest speakers with positive conversations worth waking up to. Our special guest is Clarence, Baba Clarence Eziokwu, Washington. And we're brought to you through the auspices of Brother Ralph out of Houston, Texas. Today's topic is racism from an Afrocentric pedagogical framework, white supremacy. For those of you on Facebook, you can call in to +1-848-777-1212. And the access code is 540-974#. It's 6 a.m. Pacific time, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and 1 p.m. London and Ghana. This is a special Zoom session. You can, in fact, join us by logging into zoom.us/join. Our meeting ID is 846-2702-8922. And Baba, before you open with a prayer, let me ask if that was Brother Ralph coming in. I did hear someone join us now. Oh, welcome, Wayne. Lyons calling in from Georgia. And Ms. Cooper, perhaps you could introduce yourself now and tell us where you're calling in from.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Cooper from Houston.
Thank you so much. Baba Clarence, Washington, I'm going to stop sharing our screen, which is launching our visual outlook, and turn the floor over to you. Please open us up with a prayer, and let's get this thing rolling.
As we all begin, holding our heads humbly, giving praise to the divine creator, the source of life and all things created, honoring the name who sometimes called Jesus the Christ, sometimes called Allah, sometimes called Shuku, sometimes called Nge, sometimes called Odamari.
Did you get disconnected?
Sometimes all time called.
Oh, no, I apologize.
Odamari,
Right.
Agun, and may this be acceptable to Ra and Odamari. And Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, sir. And please let me introduce to our audience, Baba Clarence Eziokwu, Washington, if I may be so kind.
Yes,
I do
sir.
also want to thank you so much for allowing us to grace us with your presence today. It's very important, and I do look forward to sharing what you're doing there with people around the world. And let me also say that this is also a collaborative between Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, that's known as one of the most Afrocentric areas of Los Angeles, California. Even though I'm in Lancaster and Baba himself is not physically there, we consider Leimert Park to be the home of our spiritual awakening in the Los Angeles area. So we want to give thanks to all of our friends and associates that are there. We really do appreciate your allowing us to share with you today. So Baba Clarence Eziokwu, Washington, is a well-known here in the Los Angeles area. He's recognized for decades of educational, cultural, and community leadership. And you can reach him at rev.c.e.washington@gmail.com. Baba is a Los Angeles-based educator, nonprofit executive, cultural organizer, and community elder. I believe he's 81 years old. His documented public service includes leadership with the We Can Foundation, educational programming across California, Leimert Park, cultural and community resource initiatives, African Americans Veterans Outreach, and heritage programming associated with Colonel Allensworth State Historical Park. Washington's most firmly documented leadership role is with the West East Community Access Network, commonly known as the We Can Foundation. We Can's organizational history also identifies him as a co-founder, director, educational consultant, and mathematics and science instructor. Independent reporting documented that We Can began providing supplemental academic support in the Los Angeles Unified School District and later expanded its educational services into more than 100 California school districts, extending from San Diego to Sacramento. During its largest operating years, the organization reported annual program service revenue exceeding $1 million, demonstrating the scale of the educational platform Washington helped build. In Leimert Park, Washington and We Can created opportunities for established and emerging artists, connected residents with educational and community resources, and supported programs designed to reduce violence and strengthen neighborhood well-being. The Stop the Killing concert series combined music with information about financial literacy, health, mental health, education, wills and trusts, insurance, and other community services. Washington also served as a community contact for African American veterans seeking continued support and equitable treatment through the West Los Angeles Veterans Affairs System. His work helped connect veterans with neighborhood-based advocacy and assistance. His cultural preservation work extended to Colonel Allensworth State Historical Park. Washington helped publicize and organize the Allensworth Scat to Rat Family Music Festival, which celebrated African American musical traditions, promoting the history of Allensworth, and raised support for young people transitioning out of foster care. Across these initiatives, Washington has consistently treated education as a community-wide responsibility. His work has brought together schools, artists, veterans, historians, health advocates, youth organizations, faith communities, and cultural institutions. Baba Clarence Izduko, Washington's documented legacy is one of institution building, expanding educational opportunity, preserving African American heritage, creating platforms for positive youth expression, and using culture as a bridge to knowledge, healing, and community action. And with that, Baba, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Wow. I wasn't expecting this depth of introduction. Consider me a servant of humanity and a griot for our culture. So I thank everyone this morning.
Well, thank you, but I'm doing this Zoom live, so you have to bear with me, brother. I'm sorry, Baba, go ahead.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And the architecture of the universal white supremacy dealing with racism. And the framework for my discussion is based upon three elements: governance, social structure, and social control, and the genealogies of liberation. This methodological framework, which I call a tri-lens interdiscipline analysis, again focusing on sociology, psychology, and theology, and elements of
Brother Ralph,
racism.
you can't hear it, then I'm going to let you go ahead and take today's show on, and I'll just continue this on Zoom if you can't hear it.
Okay. The summary of this thesis is an analysis. Please understand that white supremacy operates not as a series of isolated racial prejudice, but an intentional totalizing architectural power. This conversation examines how systemized domination is structured across 9 fundamental domains of human activities, categorized under 3 overreaching pillars. Again, governance, social structure, and social control. And to deconstruct this architecture, the lecture will apply 3 analytical lenses while grounding the strategy of liberation in intellectual and international tradition by Neely Fuller Jr., the Association of Black Psychologists, and Amos Wilson, recognizing the dynamics David Walker. Again, the architectural matrix is governance, and that's governed by 3 elements: economics, law, policy. Establishes and codifies and protects the allocation of resources, state authority, legal rights, and this builds the machine. The second is the social structure. That entails education, labor, religion. It builds institutions that socialize, train, and organize human beings to accept and maintain the social hierarchy. This runs the machine. And the third is the social control. And that entails entertainment, sex, and war. And this manages desires, polices body conditions, behavior, and use force to eliminate resistance. And this protects the machine. Now let's look at the first part, governance. Economic power often determines political influences and social opportunity. The question is, who controls the wealth? Who writes the laws? Who governs society? And I say it's CCI. That's colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism. And that was the basis of slavery as an economic system and land ownership. We recognize the genesis of America was built by rich white men as reflected in the United States Constitution. Capital accumulation and building labor, exploiting, redlining wealth, inequities, and corporate influence. And that's global capitalism. Now let's examine this 3-lens diagnostic framework. We'll look at sociological lens and we'll analyze how power is institutionalized, maintained across generations, and is optionalized through system policies and resource hoarding. The second element is psychological lens. That is conscious and conditioning. Here examines the internal is power, how systemic dynamics dominance conditions the mind toward superiority while imposing double consciousness and internalized oppression on the marginalized. The other element is the theological lens. That's the moral legitimacy and cosmology. Unmask how internal power manufactures false divine rights to justify domination, juxtaposing co-opted imperial theology against prejudice and pathetic liberation.
But Clarence, I apologize, but I must ask if you can send that to me as a document so I can read it, because our listeners that are on the conference call cannot hear you. So do you have that in a format where you could send it to me?
It's in the presentation where you did the outline.
Okay, very well then. If I may, I'm going to take the opportunity to um, put together a brief video that I put together yesterday to be able to kind of walk us through this in about 10 minutes. And then I'll actually go through the presentation that you provided to us. How about that? Is that okay with you?
That would be fine, but I also want to talk on some other elements about the theological side as well. I think that's one of the most important.
Then please go right ahead. We'll just because you are being heard on our Zoom, on our Facebook Live page. So please go right ahead. Brother Ralph, I have to ask our people in the conference room to bear with us, or you can go ahead and we can replay this later, but so we can hear it all. But okay, Clarence, go right ahead, sir. Ball's in your court.
Again, I
Technology
want to.
is only great when it works, so we just work it as we can.
That's right. That's right. Because a lot of information, I just reduce as much as I can that would be digestible to folks.
But please speak as
Recognizing we're looking at the,
yeah, speak as loudly as you can, please. Thank you.
okay, first we're looking at Neely Fuller Jr.'s The Diagnostic Code. It mapped the areas of human activities, provided liberation, and counter-racist logic for speech and actions. And the second is institutional for the Black Socialization of Psychologists, talked about institutionalized decolonization, severed the ties with European-centric psychologists, and reclaim our liberation. Mental health as a tool of cultural determination. And then we look at the last would be formulated by Amos Wilson. Now, if you don't understand the diagnostic compensatory logic, it's a codified principle that white supremacy operates across 9 specific areas of human activity. He established the fundamental rule. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. The second component was the Association of Black Psychologists, and that started in 1968 when the young scholars formed and direct revolt against Eurocentric psychology and pathological organization. The API established the Afrocentric psychological framework, providing the mental liberation and cultural affirmation are prerequisites for the institutionalized independence. And we look at Dr. Amos Wilson, the blueprint for power. Synthesized psychological decolonization and political economy in the blueprint for Black power. Wilson defines power as the capacity to define reality and have other people respond to your definition as it is with their own, outlining the operational necessity of building autonomous capital, educational, and governance structures. And we'll look at these elements. We'll look at law, which is codifying, protection, and state violence. In this sociological lens, legalized hierarchy is systemic barrier. The law as an instrument designed to protect property over people, institutionalized racial lines such as Black codes, Jim Crow, and qualified immunity.
Baba, I
Yeah.
apologize. Baba, I apologize. You're going to have to call in on the number that's on your flyer because the people in the conference room cannot hear you. And if you do that, then they can hear you, and I can share that to Facebook. Do you have that number in front of you there?
Oh, no, a second.
The flyer
Let me-
that I sent with your photo on it, that has the phone number to call in.
no,
And Brother Ralph, if you're still there, can you hear us okay? Can you hear me okay? If
Give me the
anyone's on,
number. Give me the verbal number. Give me the
yeah,
second one.
sure, of course, I apologize.
What's the number?
Yeah, the number is 848
848
777
767
1212,
12. Uh-huh.
and the
Okay.
access code is 540974.
540
974 pound.
7. Okay, I'm calling now. So hold on a second.
Okay, thank you so much. And Brother Ralph,
Call into the call, and then it'll be clear for the Facebook Live instead of the other way around.
the first time that we're doing this, I agree completely 100%.
Okay, all right, no problem. It sounds good. Easy on cool. Dear brother Ralph, how you doing, man? It's been a while. Oh, he hung up already?
He's going to call in. Do you see him calling in on your side?
All right.
He's going to call in the
No,
phone.
I'm driving right.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm driving right now. I'm not in the position to. That's the only reason I was late today. I was helping someone else.
no worries. Yeah, you probably hear him when
Still am.
he punches the pound key. I think he'll announce himself.
Yeah. Take a minute. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, but yeah, sorry for being late. I had a bunch of running around.
No worries. Now let me.
While we waiting,
Hello?
who else on the call?
I'm calling you, but I hear some
Anthony here today?
music in the background.
Nah, brother Ralph, I'm here too.
Wait. What are you saying, Clarence? Can you call in? Dial the number in. You can dial in and hang up and get off the Zoom and just call in the phone.
Reverend Baba Ezekiel Washington.
This call is being recorded.
Yeah, we're here to.
Very good. Yeah, it's coming in now.
Okay, so so we'll continue our conversation. And we'll talk about law, codification, protection, and state violence.
So please introduce yourself. And maybe you have to start from scratch. They haven't heard anything you
Do I have to start from scratch? Well, okay, this is Reverend Washington. I'm an elder, retired engineer, minister, activist, and a Afrocentric griot. I hope this gives enough context and understanding my framework and what basis I operate from. I'm connected to 3 countries. That is Ghana, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. I'm a chief village in Izara and Nze there, which means chief. But anyway, let's give it a short. That's too much about me. We want to focus on white supremacy.
They start from scratch because they heard nothing. So dive in.
We'll start again.
Yep, they heard nothing. So make sure they hear everything.
Okay. All right. All right.
It's a Hollywood
Let-
do-over. You know how we do it. It's a Hollywood do-over.
Okay. Again, the essence of this conversation, the essence of this conversation is the architecture of universal white supremacy. It's labeled under governance, social structure, social control, and the genealogies of liberation. And the methodological framework is a tri-lens interdisciplinary analysis of sociological, psychological, and theological elements of racism as defined in white supremacy. And please understand that the operation not as a series of isolated racial prejudice, but an intentional totalization architecture of power. This conversation examines how systemized domination is structured across 9 fundamental domains of human activities and is categorized under 3 overarching pillars: governance, social structure, and social control. To deconstruct this architecture, the lecture will apply 3 analytical lenses while grounding the strategy for liberation in the intellectual and institutional tradition of Neely Fuller Jr. and the Association of Black Psychologists and Amos Wilson, also recognizing David Walker. Now let us move toward the 3 matrix pillars. Governance, which has 3 elements: economics, law, and policies. Remember, this establishes, codifies, and protects the allocation of resources, state authority, and legal rights. It builds the machine. The second element is social structure, and then education, labor, and religion. Builds institutions that socialize, trains, and organize human beings to accept and maintain the social hierarchy. And this runs the machine. The other element is social control, and that's entertainment, sex, and war. This manages desires, polices bodies, conditions behavior, and uses force to eliminate resistance. It protects the machine. Now let's look at further governance. And again, economic power often determines political influence and social opportunities. The question is, who controls the wealth? Who writes the laws? Who governs society? And I like to frame it under as CCI. That's colonialism, capitalism, and liberalism, and imperialism. Now, slavery was an economic system. Land ownership was the genesis of rich, white American men, reflecting the U.S. Constitution. Capital accumulation, banking, labor exploitation redlining, wealth inequalities, corporate influence, and global capitalism. As we continue to look at the structured mechanics, we'll analyze how power is institutionalized, maintained across generations, operationalized through systematic polity and resource hoarding. In the psychological lens is the consciousness and conditioning. It examines the internal mechanics of power, how systemic dominance conditions the mind toward superiority and imposing double consciousness, trauma, and internalized oppression on the marginalized. The theological lens is the moral legitimacy and cosmological, unmask how imperial power manufactures false divine right to justify domination, juxtaposing co-opted imperial theology against pathetic liberation and ethics. And again, looking at Neely Fuller and the diagnostic and compensatory logic codifies the principle that white supremacy operates across 9 specific areas of human activity. He established the foundational rule: if you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. The second is the Association of Black Psychologists, ABPSI. It was the institutional break in 1968 when our young scholars, who are elders today, formed a direct revolt against Eurocentric psychological pathologization. The APSI established an African-centered psychological framework, providing mental liberation and cultural affirmation are prerequisites for institutionalized independence. And we're looking at Dr. Amos Wilson, the blueprint for power. Synthesized psychological decolonization and political economy in Blueprint for Black Power. Here, Wilson defines power as the capacity to define reality and have other people respond to your definition as it is were your own, outlining operational necessity of building autonomous capital, educational, and structures. Now, let's look at law. Its codification, protection, and state violence. In the sociological lens, the legalized hierarchy and the systemic barrier, the law as instrument to design, protect people, property over people, and institutionalized racial lines such as Black codes, Jim Crow, and qualified immunity and discriminatory sentencing. And we see that happening today. And the mechanism legitimizing violence and deprivation by making system harm legal, thereby defining resistance as illegal or criminal. And the psychological lens is conditioning and criminalization. The cognitive basis conditioning societies to associate Blackness with criminality and innocence and authority and internalized trauma, the psychological hypervigilance resulting from living under legal systems that often consist exposure to state-sanctioned surveillance and punitive enforcement. Now, the theological lens, the divine law versus empirical decree. That consists of false theology, conflating human imperial laws with divine authority, demanding obedience to unjust statutes under the guise of law and order. And liberation ethics, invoking higher moral laws, drawing from pathetic traditions and civil disobedience to declare the unjust law is no law at all. Now, law has been used both in racial hierarchy to protect equal rights. Here in 2027, of the past topics, slave codes that was produced by the new Jim Crow by Dr. Michelle Alexander, mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness, segregation, property rights, and citizenship. Now here in 2026, the challenge of the 13th and 14th Amendment, mass deportation, immigration laws, and 2026 mass deportation of Black, brown, and immigrants, and the civil rights of 1865 to 2025, we only have to fight this ongoing effort. We're the only people that have to do this in the civil rights legislation. Now look at politics. The question is, who has access to political power? Political franchise, governance, and rights. Through the sociological lens, the metropolization of decision-making and the systemic barrier, such as voter suppression, gerrymandering, disenfranchisement, and exclusion of marginalized voices from policy-making spaces. And this mechanism, ensuing political structures maintain white majority control regardless of demographics, shift, or political will. And here we have the psychological lens, agency versus helplessness and cognitive suppression. Engineering systemic apathy, my voice doesn't matter. So to suppress collective political agency. And the power dominates the psychological necessity of collective consciousness and political self-determination as articulated by Steve Biko to break political dependency. And on the theological lens, the ruler elite versus the shared governance. Again, false theology, framing political domination as a divine mandate to rule over lesser population for their own protection. And liberation ethics, affirming that divine authority endows all people with equal moral agency, dignity, and the right to self-governance and self-determination. Understanding the nature of political representation, colonial government, Reconstruction, disenfranchisement, gerrymandering, public policy, voting rights, political parties, civil rights movement, each contained in-depth conversation. Remember, governance set rules of the game and hold the purse string. Once economic laws and politics establish this hierarchy, the system requires a social structure. And then we have education and labor, and religion to train the population to accept these rules as natural, inevitable rights. And the second part, we're looking at the social structure, which entails education, labor, and religion. And the question is, how are people taught their policy and place in society? Education, whitewashing, Black history from history, core concepts, how society builds institutions to socialize, train, and organize human beings to accept and maintain the established hierarchy. Again, we have the social structure,
Okay.
and then we have education, and that speaks to curriculum, epistemology, morality, the knowledge system. Then we have labor, the division of work, value, exploitation, and religion, the cosmological and spiritual. Education, knowledge system, and mental education and epistemology. The social lens, institutionalization, systemic barriers, educational tracking, unequal resources, and Eurocentric criterion that erases or distorts non-Western histories. Looking at the intellect of Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro, American apartheid by Massey and Denton out of Harvard, and Sister Dr. Ruha Benjamin, Race After Technology, White Malice by Susan Williams, The Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon, and Dr. Cornel West, Black Pathetic Fire. He speaks to the genius and fire of Douglass, Du Bois, Ella Baker, Malcolm X, Ida B. Wells, true leadership, sacrifice, and courageous inspirational truth telling. In this mechanism, using school as a sorting mechanism that reproduces social classes and racial hierarchies, ensuing elite access to critical thinking while training groups. And this is what we have to do as community, continue to do it. And let's look at the psychological lens, the cognitive condition, a concept, internalized dominance, conditioning white students to perceive themselves as universal standard of intellect, historical agency, and leadership, and which is to me is ironic. And the internalized oppression, imprinting feelings of intellectual inadequacies, historical alienation, and double consciousness of students of color, and condition them to measure their worth through dominant cultural lens. And we see this by them tearing down our historical factors that we built as a community. And let's look at the theological lens. The sacred truth versus imperial indoctrination and false theology, framing Eurocentric knowledge, cultural supremacy as universal truth, or divine wisdom while demonizing indigenous and African systems of thought. And we know that the essence of, of theological thought originated in Kemet and is carved in stone. Now, moving toward liberation ethics, reclaiming education as a sacred act of consciousness, rising consciousness that honors the inherent divine intelligence within every individual to read both word and world critically. Again, I'll look at guarding facts and how it's been misconstrued. We know that the Statue of Liberty was given to this country in 1887 as a gift to the United States for stopping slavery. And it's being rechanged and giving a different social context. Now, we understand education can be reinforcing existing beliefs or equip people to challenge them in history. As said earlier, in 1968, magnified as young scholars who created Black psychology. And given the originators of such as Dr. Joseph White, who's been referred as the father of Black psychology, Dr. Francis Cecil Sums, Dr. Mamie Phillips Clark, and a few others, Dr. Francis Cross Wilson, Dr. Wayne Nobles, Wayne Name Akbar, Dr. George DeGruy, the list goes on. But we understand labor. The labor, work division, economic exploitation, human value. And through the sociological lens, stratification and wealth extraction. And we can see that happen in Africa since the beginning of time, since the invasion of Europeans in Africa. The sociological lens is the stratification and wealth extraction is a systemic barrier, segmented labor markets that assign high risk, low pay, and essential physical work to a marginalized group while reserving capital, ownership, and managerial authority for the dominant class. And the mechanism, extracting maximum productivity from marginalized bodies while systematically denying them ownership of the fruits of their own labor. But thank God for Abraham Toure, who's coming to the new leveling of Burkina Faso in Africa is awakening. Looking at the psychological lens, the dehumanization and world tied to output. The cognitive dissonance, which is a mixed value psychologically. Society is relying on essential labor while simultaneously devaluing the human being performing it. And the psychological impact. Condition workers to reduce their personal worth, economic unity, fostering burnout, alienation, and the sense of existence of despondent. The theological lens is the social dignity versus exploitative commodity. The false theology, distorting religion's text to justify servitude, laboritude, exploitation, and hierarchy as natural or God ordained order in historical slave theology. In liberation ethics, affirming the sacred dignity of labor and the worker, asserting that economic structures must serve human flourishing rather than sacrificing human lives at the altar of profit. Remember, these aspects enslave labor, indentured labor, sharecropping, industrial labor union, wage inequities, and employment discrimination and occupational sector. Now we're going to look at religion. While religion sits firmly as a foundation on the pillar of within social structure, it influences and bleeds nonstop to governance and social control. And governance is the sanctification of power. Imperial religion provides the moral sheet for unjust laws, conquest, economic extraction, and the manifest destiny, and the biblical justification for chattel slavery. Social structure, institutionalization, normalization. Religious institutions organize social behavior, determine moral norms, dictate family structures, and control vast community finance assets. And social control is the psychological pacification, It weaponizes to direct the grievances of the oppressed away from the real world and structured oppressor towards outwardly salvation. I mean, suffer on earth and then get your reward in heaven, enforcing obedience to the divine. Now look at the tri-lens diagnosis of the analysis of religion. Sociological and institutionalized glue versus liberation sanctuary. The imperial function sociologically, mainstream Eurocentric religion act as an institutional glue. It legitimizes the ruling class by sacralizing the state hierarchy. Churches historically function as a primary center for record keeping, land ownership, and social stratification. The dual nature is response to exclusion, marginalization, and community built. The Black church, African spiritual institution, these spaces serve as a dual sociological function and autonomous refuge from white surveillance, and primarily incubation site for civic organization, mutual aid, economic pooling, and civil rights leaders, such as the SLC, CORE, SNCC, looking at the activists such as Demark, Demvisi, and Nat Turner. The psychological lens, the cosmic conditioning, imaginary and self-concept, the iconography of dominance, mainstream Eurocentric Christianity deployed a specific psychological weapon, the white deity, imposing images of white God, the white Jesus, white angels, subconsciously established whiteness as a divine, pure, and supreme, while blackness is associated with sin, darkness, and demonic. But demonic, well, thank you. Yeah, I figure folks are listening, that's why I throw those words out there. So, and the pathological impact of the oppressed. Divine inferiority introduces deep-seated subconscious belief that power, authority, and ultimate righteousness reside in whiteness. And passive acceptance weaponizes concept like turn the other cheek or store your treasures in heaven, encourage to acceptance of earthly poverty, abuse framing passivity as a virtue. When your oppressor becomes your deity. Now I'm going to take this journey. I'm not going back to 325 BCE. I'm going to start with the Pope Alexander in 1493 and the Papal Bull. That justified Spain and Portugal to convert the souls in Africa. And then we have Pope Julius, the creating of the Holy Family. And that replace the black face with the white face. And this thing about moving fast forward, looking at Andrew Jackson, president, and the Indian Removal Act. Remember movement, the Black church yesterday and today, tomorrow. What happens when NGOs are involved in liberation theology? Let's look at the civil rights movement from David Walker in 1829. Most folks aren't aware of this brother. The preambles of the colored citizens were and moral leadership of faith and justice. Now, this theological lens, idolatry versus prophetic liberation ethics. Imperial idolatry, co-opted faith. Empirical theology strips the historical Jesus of identity as an oppressed Black Judean, remember Remember, Judea is basic in Northeast Africa. Ain't no Middle East there. But people want to address it as Middle East. They put the Suez Canals and pull Egypt out of Africa. So understand that dialogue. When we talk about the Middle East, always use Northeast Africa. But to look at the idea of the Roman military occupation at that time, transforming revolutionary anti-imperial government movement into an ideology that justifies empire, capitalism, and radical caste. And we see how the caste system works across the world. The pathetic liberation theology advances thinkers like James Cone, Howard Thurman, Frantz Fanon, and the critique of colonial mission. God of the oppressed asserts that God is not neutral in situations of oppression. God takes a preferred option for the marginalized. Unmasking idolatry declares any theology or church structure that opposes white supremacy is not divine truth, but antichrist idolatry designed to serve human tyranny. Again, looking at Neely Fuller, identifies religion as their primary 9 areas where confusion resides, his code dictates. The test of religion, any religion, belief, or speech that permits or encourages white supremacy to continue is incorrect. The objective, not only valid purpose of religion activity under a system of oppression, is to establish justice, and correctness. If a religious practice does not help produce justice on earth, it is counterproductive. Let's look at the AP psychologist, African-centered spiritualism. Okay, the pioneers of the Association of Black Psychologists, such as Dr. Wayne Nobles, Dr. Joseph White, and others, recognize that Eurocentric religion fractured the African self-concept by separating the physical from the spiritual. The spiritual alignment, the Neteru Ma'at, APSI introduces a model psychology rooted in ancient Kemet, West African worldviews where spirituality is not dogmatic control, but realization of human interconnectedness to the divine, intrinsic worth, and psychological harmony, decolonizing the divine, restoring the African-centered spiritual consciousness. And understand that has always been Kemetic way of thinking. We were the source of the theology out of Africa. Everything else is a modified and copied from it. And let's look at Dr. Amos Wilson, the blueprint for religious power. In the blueprint for Black power, Dr. Amos Wilson offers a blunt political economic critique on Black church and religious institutions, critique of resources misallocation. Wilson notes that the Black church historically holds the largest pool of collective Black wealth and real estate. However, too much of this capital is spent on grand buildings and emotional catharsis rather than institutional power. An operational imperative. Wilson demands that religion institutions operate as a development center. Churches must utilize their tax-exempt status, land, and capital to build own credit unions. Independent schools, architectural pipelines, and political action committees. That's something we need to talk about a church must do. That's why a
That's
lot of
why a
youth are
lot of youth
walking
are
away
walking
from
away
the churches,
from the churches.
looking at the generational gap.
Generational gap.
Now we're looking at from
And
ecology to
economic
action.
to action.
Faith must move from an otherworldly escape to in this world. Operational blueprint for group survival and determination and economic mobility. And part three is the social control. The core concept, how power manages desire, policies, bodies, conditions, and behavior, use force to enforce compliance to eliminate resistance. And social control, you have entertainment, sex, and war. The media propagates violence,
But
cultural expansion, and sex, body policing, gender, and bodily autonomy. And war, state force, and imperialism. Now, entertainment, propaganda, and cultural storytelling is how power is marginalized to man within everyday culture. The sociological lens manufacturing
manufacturing.
distortion, the, the systemic barrier, monopolization of culture narrative, media platform, and representation by dominant power structure. Mechanism, entertainment acts as a narrative entity using tropes, caricatures, created images to normalize racial hierarchy, pacify discontent, and distract populace from social inequities. The psychological lens, decentralization, identity, formulation, internalized
Internalized.
dominance, reinforces a definite sense of cultural ownership, heroism, and universal representation for the dominant class. The internalized oppressor shapes how marginalized groups view themselves through a stereotypical hypervisibility, negative roles to ensure from noble history, shaping subconscious desire, standards of beauty, self-worth. Theological lens is the false idols versus pathetic narrative. False theology, elevating celebrity, consummation and realization of mythologies to sacred status, replacing moral accountability and spectacle. Liberation ethics, reclaiming art, storytelling, and cultural expression as a tool for truth-telling, exposing systemic lies, and restoring human dignity. Other is sex, body piercing control of reproduction and desire. Sociological regulation of body and lineage. Systematic barriers, law, social norms designed to police intimacy, racial purity, reproductive freedom, and freedom structures. Anti-miscegenation law, forced sterilization, commodification of Black bodies. Mechanism, using sexual regulation and body control as the primary mechanism to protect property lines, enforcing radical caste, and maintain labor supply. Remember the Love Act about in the 60s, that legal marrying black and white? And that was 65, the case. And then the Mann Law created against black, against Jack Johnson. There's a lot of things, the history there, but we don't need to, we need to talk about, recognize, the psychological, the fetishization, shame, and trauma. And the cognitive dissonance, that's projecting social anxieties, hyper sexualized myth, racial fears into bodies of marginalized people, and scotoma. Scotoma is a psychological term which means blind spot. And sometimes our people have what I call a cultural scotoma, a historical scotoma, meaning a blind spot, internalized impact, in weaponizing sexual shame, body trauma to undermine individual autonomy, ruptures self-image, and fragment community solidarity. Theological lens, body sacredness versus imperial degradation. False theology, using puritanical or distorted religious dogmas to control body intimacy, justify ownership or abuse oppressed people, liberation ethics, affirming that human bodies and sexuality are sacred creations inherently endowed with autonomy, deserving safety, respect, and self-determination. The Kujikajalia all over again, Kwanzaa. So thinking on war, state violence, militarism, imperial expansion, the social lens, monopoly on violence, and global extraction. A systemic barrier. The state uses a military power, police forces, and foreign interventions to maintain global dominance, extract resources, and suppress dominant rebellion. We see that happen in Africa. It's been pull all the resources out, and the people are subservient. Now, the mechanism and war on military serve as the ultimate enforcement tool when legal, political, and economic controls fail to maintain the status quo. The psychological lens is the dehumanization and enemy construction and the cognitive condition, psychological warfare, propaganda, and manufacture the enemy or threat. Conditioning of public to view state violence as necessary and heroic. Internalized impact, normalizing constant fear, materializing policing, collect trauma, while stripping oppressed groups of the right to self-defense of resistance. The theological lens, in Holy Empire versus peace and justice. Again, the false theology, framing imperial conquest and militarism as holy wars and manifest destiny, or righteous mission to civilize the world. Liberation ethics invoking the prophetic calls for peace, justice, and anti-imperialism, asserting that true peace is not merely the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. Now here I put a lot of the historical case study. I just moved number one, the European colonization, transitional trade, slave trade, Reconstruction period of Ruthie B. Hayes of 1874. Now we see the new Ruthie B. Hayes of 2025 of Donald Trump, Jim Crow, the new Jim Crow, and the reintroduction of the newer Jim Crow. It's Jim Crow on steroids. We look at the 1919 Indian Red Summer, race riots all across this country, the 1908 Springfield riot, which was the genesis of Allensworth in 1908, the formation of NAACP in 1909, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Panthers Movement, Brown versus the Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act from 1865, the struggle from 1865 to 1965 to the struggle of 2025. Now look at the resistance. Throughout history, people have organized, have challenged racism and white supremacy through these actions and must do it today. Education, organization, legal advocacy, economic cooperation, faith community, labor organizing, journalism, arts and culture, civil rights activism, international human rights movement. Including my synthesis to dismantle the structure, you must first understand how it holds itself up. What we have examined today is not a series of isolated glitches, unfortunate historical accidents, individual or moral failings. It is a intentional totalizing architecture of power built upon three fundamental pillars: governance, social structure, and social control. Remember, governance through economics, law, and policies establish who holds the power, who owns the wealth, who dictates the rules. It builds a machine. And the social structure, through education, labor, and religion, normalizes that hierarchy, training our mind and spirit to accept artificial inequities as natural law. It runs the machine. The social control through entertainment, sex, and war policies our desires, conditions, our fears, and deploys force wherever the status quo is threatened. It protects the machine. When we look through the sociological lens, we see the cold mechanics of how power institutionalizes itself across generations. When we look through the psychological lens, we confront the internal scars, how this power conditions the dominant mind towards supremacy, and the marginalized mind towards compliance. When we look through the theological lens, we unmask the ultimate hypocrisy, how imperial power attempts to satisfy itself as a divinely orientated, hiding behind false moral authorities. But recognizing this architecture is not an exercise in despair. It is a prerequisite for liberation. As Steve Biko reminds us, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is in the mind of the oppressed. Once we see that white supremacy is constructed systems, we realize it is neither eternal or invincible. It was engineered by human design and can be deconstructed by collective will. When we reclaim our knowledge systems, reclaim the dignity of our labor, reclaim our moral clarity, and refuse to internalize the myth fed to us by governance and control, the architecture begins to crumble. The work before us is not merely to reform the machine, but build a human-centered world while justice is not an exception, but the foundation which we all stand on. You have to kind of excuse me because sometimes as a minister, I have a tendency to run fast, and then I wrote this down to kind of keep me structured on, and I was stammering over the words, which is not my usual tonation. But at the same time, preparing for this, the new event coming up in 2027, produced by the Hip Hop for Peace Institute, Hip Hop for Peace, the NAACP, the GUCC, will be holding a global rally in the historical town of Allensworth in February 2027. It's a global impact, having people from around the world being there, bringing their flags, making a statement for global solidarity. So I thank everybody for allowing me to carry me to this lecture.
Well, thank you, Baba Washington, and I'll turn it over to you, Brother Ralph, or the floor is open for any comments or questions. Thank you. The floor is open.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm grateful for an opportunity to be here in the present, and some great wisdom you were sharing there, and I think it's very important for all of us in the community to be able to grow knowledge, but also find a way to come together to be a part of the solution. And I think that what you said, there's so much put on the table that I can't just try to summarize it all right now, but in regards to just your knowledge and experience and recognizing leadership in our community, being able to lead by example, to be able to spread knowledge to the people, show the example of how to get it done in regards to having events and programs. I heard the introduction that you had, and like I said, it's an honor to be here, and I love to follow up with you to be able to truly collaborate on some events, join in with some of the teams that are already existing, and also share some of the tools and resources I've been exposed to in regards to what is helpful in spreading this knowledge, entrepreneurship opportunities, as well as this collective engagement. We could leverage as each individual to their own organization, their own tribe, their own community, their own family. Each of them have their own foundational space where they could be fruitful. And as we come together to just celebrate each other, I think it'll be a great thing that we could do consistent. So I would love to have, feedback on what would be a good time to follow up. So we can have a conversation and so we can all understand how we get on the same page to make it happen in this body. So thank you for allowing me to share. Thank you for your time and your care.
You're most graciously welcome. I just wanted to take time to recognize a colleague of mine, understudy of Dr. Ben, Dr. Makalani Kakongo and Dr. Barris is on the call as well. Again, this is the first statement calling people together. We're building a synergistic approach because we're back to 1874 all over again. It's a new battleground. We need a new battle plan, reinforcing the old battle plan to move forward, bringing generations together. This is a cross-generational platform. But I thank you.
Yeah, we got the technology and we got the wisdom, and that's the whole key. And you say that God is Christ is the head, and then people is the body. So understand we function in order to really get the full operation of who we are as children of God. We gotta first have the right guidance. That's where the elders come in, and the head, and the wisdom, and the vision, and the organization, and then the body is the youth, people who got the passion, got the energy, got the health, so we can make the things happen. And that's how we all work together, guided, and then make it work. So I said I want to connect, and so we could really not just keep talking, but really show people how to get done. And I know y'all already doing it, so that's why I want to that with people who got it done, who's doing it. That's why I'm honored to be here.
Well, you have, if you want my telephone number.
Yeah, please. I was about to ask you to share your email and number. Thank you.
Okay, my cell number is 310-948-5524. And my email It's REV. VR is Romeo Echo Victor .C .E .Washington at gmail.com. And my office I moved over to is STEM 54, where Dr. Beatty is housed, off of 54th and 7th Avenue. You'll see the STEM building there. And for those that don't remember, Dr. Beatty was the scientist, the professor who rode from Los Angeles to Galveston, Texas, 20 years ago with the theme STEM across America. And we have to understand that education is always the key and understand the source of grounded knowledge. All the scholars that spent the time putting in books and recognizing the elders before that carved that into stone. The Manuetta, the sacred writings, and all the things it taught us continue to teach us. We must open our minds, open our hearts, and open our desire to come together as one body, one soul, and one spirit. Recognize it doesn't matter if you have a degree, no degrees. We know that the Europeans are giving us the third degree. So we need to recognize our strength. Yes, sir.
Anthony out of California. We have a very similar playground in LA County. I met Andrew quite some time ago, but there's a part when this daily call comes in, there's a heavy faith part that starts the morning. Today was an area, or today was the day that I understand you 100%. And interesting enough, I'm not sure how many men of God and women of God that you come across in LA, but when you spoke today, the entire story I heard clear. There's a part in history where when you detangle all the big pieces you talked about,
yes, sir,
the trade system that went into play requires the initiation of hacks to not only explain what you said, but to double lock it down, making it impossible for mankind to maneuver, which means you only end up in unity. And it really tickled me early on why Brother Ralph was not as open the Bible. When I came across a red letter edition that had the colonists in the inside, it almost ripped my soul apart. Because I realized they had created something, and you couldn't really find that Bible. It was dated back to 1850 from the grandmother that died watching the church. He died watching the church of Caucasian folks minister as he was in the bar, stole the Bible, and carried it to. I seen it not too long ago, about 5 years ago. That allowed me to really absorb the word unity without the Bible and then find this network. Saying that is because we don't have a structure like a process that the U.S. does. That's where it becomes a little challenging. So I've seen that in a pattern, and the only way I felt to connect and resonate with what you said is based on the principle that God had to release to infrastructure to us. When you don't even on the call, someone like me over understand because we had rights to orchestrate implementing the food system. The more you had left out in the today's call, because it's a faith-based call, you had left out a lot of the heavy components of scripture involved in the dialogue.
What,
I realized that.
May I interject this? I understand what you're saying and I embrace what you're saying. We need to understand the concept of ma'at. That was people are governed by Mosaic law that was only 3,000 years. Oh, Ma'at goes back 7,000 years. They tell you, Moses, the lawgiver, tells you, thou shalt not kill the sixth commandment, right? But if I go back to Ma'at, 3,000 years or 4,000 years before Moses, it says, I have not done no murder or harm. That's carved in stone. Once you go to Africa, you can see that the Manuetta speaks to Ma'at. So if you speak in that context, that's why my narrative is always, it was always Ma'at Hotep. So understand the nature, the Ma'at and the way of looking at life. And again, I'm an ordained minister. I'm also an Khan high priest. And I'm a theologian at one level.
I wanted to take thank you on the call today. I absorbed a lot, and I didn't want to know that sometimes individuals will say, will say that I may have not responded right, but what I understand is in the structure of today, I normally do an act. So when you talked about today, the action part of that,
yes, sir,
is where that there is a first step, and that could be if you're in LA, we could work on the bringing part together, the unity. I believe comes from the model of Garden of Eden. So we would work together to put in beautification, and that's why I brought up the word patent. It's proprietary.
right.
I don't know how today's could act any more than that way, and that's why in the part of this group I can see. So I would just say that that's how I took today. There's the action part, which is a raised garden bed, maybe one color per location to highlight when we further this dialogue. There is a clear understanding of God and the Holy Spirit's presence. I think that's one that's really been hard for me in a lot of the years, hundreds of years. So that was just what I was touching on, that approach. And then when it comes to food, the pattern of the selling of food in the American system to be accounted for, which normally in God's system and the Holy Spirit, there's no law. So that's why I can see that anything that's not used, there's no law. So as we were talking, I believe in today's time, and that pattern was solved, you had to give some wormhole. And that's what God and the Holy Spirit fought for a wormhole with the lawyer. As you're talking about, several structures fit into play. But the wormhole allows us to listen and myself and say, wow, there is a man of God, a reverend on the phone that we can move forward.
That's right.
And that's generally what I not just listen, but try to look at a strategy, because it's no barriers. God, Holy Spirit focus. I thank you for today, because we always are faith ready. Today was an example of faith and move.
Right.
Just a note.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
How are you, man? It's so good to hear your voice. And God bless you, everyone on the call.
Yes,
Say
sir.
who you are. Say who you are.
I'm sorry, who else is asking me to say who I am?
Andrew
Brother
Williams.
Williams.
Oh, really? Yeah, I thought that was I thought that was ambassador. I was about to say who I am. And yeah, all good. This is Sir Baba Washington. I'll reach out to you. I just sent you a text. I didn't get the depth of your information. But I just wanted to say it's good to hear your voice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
DJ Naj and I that just
Oh,
mentioned
DJ.
you when we
Oh, DJ now. That's yes.
So yeah, to God be the glory, and I'll
Oh, never
get out the way. You guys,
never get out the way, sir. You are
Bless
part of the
you.
way.
You are part of the way.
Bobby, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, this has been very illuminating and empowering. But I do again have a propensity of going beyond the stroke of my conversation. And it could have been a whole hour. I could have got more into depth. I've gone back. I could have gone back to 325 C, CB, C, common CB. Ugh, that's a shame. Before the Common Era, before CE. But thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share, everyone, from a restraintive conversation and energy, because I get overly concerned about the dilemma that we're in, and we're not in a triage. We are at war. So one needs all type of armament to arm ourselves mentally, physically, socially, economically, and those are the characteristics of any strong entity: body, mind, and soul. And I like to use the example of, and I didn't use the example, going back to uh, Mackendal, Dada Bookman, and Cecilia Fatama of Haiti. When they call that universal spiritual of the divine, the whole country rose up. One spirit, one body, and one mind. And their country is still being penalized today because blacks got their independence. And we can see how this country continues to want to reduce our power. But we don't allow that to be happening. We need to understand educating our children, sharing our experience, and learning from their experience, what they're thinking, what they are feeling, and build that into construct about they're the new path forward. We become the toe print in their footprint. Anyway, that's
That is correct. I believe someone like me looked for you last night. There was something that touched me, not knowing how I felt about today's call, even telling you. It was obey. I sat there and looked at my kids. Encouraging. This is a testimony for you guys, Ralph, everyone that calls, Sir Bailey, Andrew. I looked at my kids and I said, "Wow, we're in war today." And I told them, over the next 2 months, I have to go through a transformation. And they didn't understand because, there's so many different structures. You can't explain it to the kids. So I opened up the Bible after I meditated. I said, I have to give you the guide. I'm so stingy. I don't want my kids to have access to certain things. They know it. So I said, I have to give you the guide and I have to share it. When I opened up and flipped it, it went to a page, obey. And it was Deuteronomy 11:27. A blessing is to obey the commandments of the Lord, your God. That, to me, in agriculture, represented you have to have the presence of the angels, which is cloud. When I think about listening to you, I hear the understanding of the world we're in, and I look around and I put myself in your shoes, and I don't know if I see clouds. I don't know if I see an abundance of colors to represent the word you hear. So that means that I have to obey His commandments to tell you I believe I can help you. Which I command you this day. And this is what I woke up in Joshua 24:24. And this is really so crying as I'm listening, as I'm kind of fighting in my spirit. And then the people said unto Joshua, the Lord our God will we serve. I read it 4 times. Will we serve? And I said, how does that look? It's the vegetable thing. The vegetable has to be picked from the ground, offered with supernatural blessings to the next person. But untouched, it can't be contaminated. So I said, and this and His voice will we obey. Samuel 15:22, and Samuel said, as research that has the Lord as great delight and burnt offering. I can't believe I would offer someone after the Lord had said, this is how food should grow, something so free. It burned in my soul. This is offering. And they saw on the news. It's like a death. I couldn't believe it. Burnt offering. As the Lord, great delight in burnt offerings, great delight. And sacrifices, and to the hearken and the fat of the ram. And I just thought, there's no fat in rams. That's just fluff. Anyway, great is our God for the best, but to give trash and good as a replacement of God and the Holy Spirit. There's two parts. There's the love and the law. The law is the plant has to grow. If I touch something and I rub it on my hand and I brush it across your nose, I'll catch your attention. That's what I looked at as the mint. It has to grow. Anyway, this placement on the Holy Spirit, Samuel said, actually Samuel made a statement in that. That was something I was researching. It was a story of testimony. Then I stopped because it was a little too intense after this. My daughter said, Dad, are you going to be done? I gotta listen and absorb this because we have the tools, God. We have the ability to move, and I need you so much that I will sit down and just look for no one. I don't really look for no one. I listen well, like I did today, but looking after I listen and acting is something that man is talented with. They can choose not to put a plant in the ground and justify to themselves that it doesn't matter. And the next person with the color to come to their place. It's a weird tangle in it. And then it says, Jeremiah 7:23, but this thing commanded by them, saying, obey my voice, and I will be your God. You ever hear the verse? They acknowledge there's a new beginning. The respect for the birds makes you so sensitive that you have to be willing to listen to the birds and keep the same way. It's a respect for the nature. So, and I will be your God, and ye shall be my people. The part of that is each night we go to sleep. I told my daughter, I said, I sleep, and I don't have nightmares. There's a lot going on. I may cry today, but I ain't got no nightmares. I'll look forward to the birds tomorrow. But man, I look forward to meeting someone like Ian. Someone like Ian worked really hard how to listen well and respond. So I learned how to listen well and respond. So I thank you gratefully for coming on the
You're
call
welcome,
today.
sir. Appreciate you.
You're welcome, sir. Appreciate you. I really appreciate that thorough feedback. That's a great response. I'm inspired by the desire of your growth and the intentional consciousness and awareness of your growth. And that's iron sharpening iron. So thanks for your feedback.
I appreciate those warm words. As an elder, it's appreciating the vibrations and the coming from the group, knowing that I'm motivated by ancestors, and saying that our ancestors, not only do we stand on their shoulders, but they are us, and they speak through us. That's why Queen Hatshepsut back in the day, know thyself. And the self goes back to the beginning of creation, according to the law of Ma'at, the goddess of truth. Anyway.
You're right on point. These are the lessons that need to be taught. And if we could get the awareness of people that this is where they can get that source. So
Uh-oh. We lost something. I can hear. I guess I lost the video.
Yeah, I'm speaking about the opportunity to bring people into one space. Can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you. All right, yeah, I was just saying how this is an opportunity for people who are leaders in the community, share their beliefs, really share their leadership. So in that city could represent place that power that the people that get the support that they get to support their business or their brand. What they could lean towards speak about how we take action. We take this information that we have, as well as the desire to connect and apply it to our life in real time. Doing these events, whether it starts off as something virtual and then we could decide, or we pick dates where we can all come to each other's city and have something in person. I would love the idea of that as well, but to make a plan, communicate about it, and execute it. I think that's what represents great leadership. And I love to model that great leadership with you great leaders who are here today.
So Wayne,
Well, you know,
wait, Wayne, please again, introduce yourself, your name and where you're calling from, please.
My name is Wayne Lyon, and I'm calling on behalf of Empire Force. That's the nonprofit to support youth empowerment, and youth is anywhere from age 8 to 80. You don't have an age that determines youth, it's the mindset. And we're here to talk about peace and love, being ambassadors of that as kingdom leaders. So I represent global leadership, and yeah, I'm grateful to be here today.
How can people reach you?
you got my telephone number and email.
Is that correct? I sent a text message and I didn't get the complete email because my autocorrect messed it up. So I texted my name. Wanted to make sure I got the right email.
Well, give him your number and contact Wayne. I mean, make it happen, Captain.
Yeah, you can call me or kick me at 313. Hold on a second.
What is it again?
313 247 7979.
Okay.
That's Wayne Lyons the second. Wayne Lyons the second. Anthony, do you want Baba to call you? Anthony Vasquez?
Yes, Bob. If he can put on his, give me his phone number as well.
My number is
310
948 5524. And you're out in San Bernardino?
Out of Riverside.
Riverside. Okay.
And so what I would like to suggest, Baba, is for this event you mentioned about this visit to Allensworth. I spoke with Kenneth Wyrick, and as I understand it, Metrolink will actually provide a tour package for people that are traveling to Allensworth. And of course, when you mentioned racism, that's Silky D. Williams, who's our international global ambassador along with you, and Tina Marie Tyler. And all three of you are my goodwill ambassadors. So I would like, as well as is Wayne Lyons, as is Sir Bailey, and I don't know if he's still there, but Brother Ralph, you're on the list too. So let's make an effort to point everyone for this trip next year in February to Allensworth.
That's something that the Hip Hop Institute for Peace, NAACP, the Global Urban Cultural Community is putting together that kick racism in Allensworth. I'm filling out the forms now and talking to the park ranger and getting that together. Steve told me is the person that's over the park rangers, and Lori Ware is the person that's in charge of a park.
So we'll keep that in mind, and just to let everyone here know the wake-up call, we'll support this project, and I'll announce when we get the final details. I'll announce it in advance. And we'll put
Okay.
together an agent travel team so that we can support kickracism.org and also
Right.
hiphop.org.
Right.
Hip hop,
Right.
the number 4, hip hop 4, the number 4, peace.org.
Right.
With Tina Marie Tyler. And again, locally
Right.
at Sylvia Williams and Ladylike Entertainment.
Right. That's what I'm working with.
I'm not confused. So, Brother Ralph, are you still there? Because if not, I'm going to ask Brother Baba to give us a closing prayer or open up the floor. Now's that time. For the good of the house, anyone who would like to step up, now's that time. Going once, going twice. So close us out, Brother Baba. Ball's in your court. You open us up, so close us out.
As we bow our head in humility, broadcasting the need for empowering a people, bringing together all involved today, both body, mind, and spirit. We'll ask our ancestors to continue to protect, empower each and every one. And may we be the continual use and source for empowering and emboldening ourselves in the community. And we say Ashe.
Say, I say. Well, thanks, everyone. This is Andrew Williams Jr., and this has been the morning wake-up call, the international conference call, brought to you by Brother Ralph.
God is good. God is love.
That's right.
Thank you all. This is Andrew Williams.
Brother William, I'll
signing
call you
off.
right back. Brother William, I'll call you right back.
At your convenience. We're going to close out
Yes,
with this morning wake-up call. Today is August the 6th of 2026. This has been special guest Clarence Ezekiel Washington here on the morning wake-up call, the international conference call, brought to you by Brother Ralph. And with that, I'm going to end the call today and end the Zoom transfer. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Love you all. Give me a call.
Thank you.
Andrew Williams Jr. You can reach me at, I forgot me. I'm available at 424-243-6580. And for you, those of you in the Zoom room, I see Dr. Makalani. If you'd like to introduce yourself or if you'd like to make a statement, now's the time. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up.
Mayat Hotep.
Mayat Hotep.
Dr. Kiki Gungo, your microphone is open. Do you want to make any comment?
Mayat Hotep is my comment.
Hey, that's a wrap. We're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much. Everyone have a fantastic day.
Thank you.